invocation, please.
Let's bow our heads and pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Chair Jones.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Langland,
Present.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Present.
Commissioner Locke,
Here.
Chair Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Howie,
Here.
Commissioner Barra,
Present.
Commissioner Marchetti,
Present.
Commissioner Lee.
Here. All right, this time we'll open the floor to public comment, limit 3 minutes per person, address the board as a whole. Please do not address the audience. Whoever would like to go first may do so.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Matthews. I am the Director of the Friend of the Court for Cass County, as well as the Circuit Probate Family Court Administrator. As you think tonight on some budget options, I wanted to provide you some information on the Friend of the Court specifically. It's existed since 1919 to look over support and to ensure that children regularly receive support and proper care by their custodians, to make recommendations to the court for the betterment and conditions of the children. They have done that for 100 years. We are still here serving and empowering local families to make children's lives better. The Cass County Friend of the Court currently has approximately 3,179 cases that it's responsible for. That means that we are working with over 6,000 parents and or guardians for their children. To give you just a basic number, 678 of those parents are Cassopolis residents, 1,523 are Dowagiac residents. Roughly $500,000 in current support is owed monthly to the children of Cass County, along with support that is in arrears. We don't only just do financial management, we help with parenting, time, and custody issues. Our services are critical and they are mandated by the state. We are funded at 66% under the Title 40 of the Social Security Act. We receive federal incentive money based on our performance as well. We are monitored by the state on cost effectiveness. For every dollar spent on FOC services in Cass County, $4 of child support are collected with the revenues back. That is 33 cents put in by the county for $4 for your child. 33 cents for $4. I knew that the BOC was requesting a balanced budget, so I looked at my mandated duties this year. When I had an open position, I didn't fill it, and I shifted the duties. I voluntarily gave up that position. When my bench warrant officer retired, I changed his position and am planning to not have a position that needs a vehicle to eliminate that expense. Looking at the balanced budget option, it says that the Friend of the Court is to cut another 2 positions. That's a reduction of 20% of my staff. That also means I have to fire someone because I only have 1 open position at this point in time. That is my review of the numbers. If I'm wrong, I really hope I'm wrong. I do not believe the Friend of the Court can adequately carry out almost 50 pages of mandated duties and get the child support that the children of this county need. So I urge you to not cut my staff.
Next.
I'm George King, a resident of Calvin Township, and I'm just going to start out with a very simple statement, no prepared speech, but I'm here to advocate for a balanced budget, passing a balanced budget. With that being said, I can't fill the entire 3 minutes here, so I'm not going to try, but I'd like to thank everybody sitting in front of me for your participation, your oversight, your thoughts on this. It's a tough situation to grapple with. I've been involved with budgets in large organizations as well as pretty large municipalities, and we just have to answer some pretty tough questions as we go through the process. I've been asked not to address the people to my right, but many of the people to my right are staff members. They're to be commended also. They put together the budget. They put together, if you'll excuse my language, they put it together with blood, sweat, and tears. It's their departments that they have to manage, and it's a tough time to manage a department. But the citizens of Cass County do not deserve anything other than a balanced budget. I happen to volunteer to do taxes at the COA, and while I'm bound by confidentiality, I'll keep this at a very high level. When I do many of the taxes for the people of this county, my heart is broken. I've never seen such poverty. Why do they file for taxes? Not the same reason that you do. They file for taxes for energy credits, for property tax credits, and to get their returns so they can pay their property tax. I know that because they come back and they say, "Where are we, George? Where are my taxes?" They're beating on my door. So once again, I'm going to offer my thoughts, balance of budget. I don't have the facts here, but I'm not going to be like many of the hundreds of people that stood at this stadium and tell you what to do. I'm not qualified. So what I'm going to do is give you my telephone number, and if you'd like to talk to me individual, if you'd like to put me on a committee, if you'd like to hear some alternative thoughts, I'm built for rejection, okay? And I enjoy that. This should be a fun process because the outcome will be to make Cass County the stellar county in the state of Michigan. I don't want to be another Me Too county. I want to be the stellar county in this economy. Got a pencil ready?
Yep.
574-261-3882. I've talked to RJ about this. RJ, thank you for the updates that you've given me. And I wish everybody in this room, even the people to my right, best of luck. It's
What's
a
your last name
complicated
again,
process.
sir? What's your last name again?
George King, K-I-N-G.
All right, thanks.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next. Going once, going twice, public comment is now closed. Number 6, additions, deletions to the agenda. Does anybody have anything? Number 7, approval of the agenda, Commissioner Locke.
I move to approve the agenda as is.
Second.
We've got a motion with support. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 8, Commissioner Barrera.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes of July 20, 2023, Committee of the Whole.
Second.
We've got a motion on the floor with support. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, do the same. Motion carries. Number 9, we'll start with A, Treasurer Anderson.
Good evening. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring all that stuff. For your review is the results of the 2021 foreclosure sale. The Michigan Department of Treasury requires this foreclosure sales report to be submitted to the Board of Commissioners and the State Treasurer no later than September 30th of the second calendar year after foreclosure. The report that I'm referring to looks like this. Do you all have that?
I got it. Yep.
And then for the benefit of our guests, I did want them to see the foreclosure trends in Cass County and how they have reduced significantly, have trended downward since 2013. The General Property Tax Act was modified in 2021 in response to the Michigan Supreme Court's decision in Raffaelli versus Oakland County. In the Raffaelli case, the court determined that individuals with an interest in tax foreclosed real property retain a constitutionally protected right to auction proceeds exceeding the property's owed taxes, interest, penalties, fees, and other costs. This marked a transformative shift in Michigan's real property tax foreclosure landscape, rendering unconstitutional sections of the General Property Tax Act that once allowed foreclosing government units to retain excess proceeds. Foreclosure year 2020, which you have in front of you, was the first year there was an actual process for former interest holders to claim an interest in sales proceeds in excess of the minimum bid and other foreclosure-related fees. We only paid out one claim that year, And that was to a local unit who had a lien on a foreclosed property. The remaining claims were for properties that were actually sold at the minimum bid where no remaining proceeds existed. The process of claiming potential proceeds begins with completing Form 5743. It's called the Notice of Intention to Claim Interest in Foreclosure Sales Proceeds. This form is user-friendly, and it's conveniently accessible through the county website. And there's additional information that we communicate with through several notices when a property is in forfeiture as well as after it forecloses about this easy-to-fill-out form. And I point that out because, and one more thing about that, we also have a link on our county website with easy step-by-step instructions from Michigan Legal Help. It's actually called How to Ask for Your Leftover Money After a Tax Foreclosure. I point that out because every single claim that I received this year was submitted by a lawyer. Which means that homeowner will have to pay a portion of their proceeds to them. Again, the process is very easy, and former owners do not necessarily need legal assistance. Many homeowners have told me that lawyers contact them directly, and they have thought they needed a lawyer to claim the excess proceeds. This outcome is disheartening, and it's badly in need of review at the state level. That is something that my Association of County Treasurers is sharing, and we will be sharing with our local representatives as well. Unless anyone has any questions about this report of foreclosure sales, I would like to give an update on the class action settlement for foreclosures prior to this law change. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I will move on then to the class action lawsuit, and for the benefit of those who may not know, I'll give a little bit of background. In December of 2022, the Cass County Board of Commissioners unanimously passed a resolution to enter into a long-awaited settlement agreement regarding excess proceeds from tax foreclosure sales. This agreement was reached after years of careful consideration and negotiation, and it was adopted by all the counties in the Western District. That's almost all of the counties in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, as well as the western half of Michigan's Lower Peninsula. Its primary purpose is to prevent any future legal disputes or controversies. The settlement agreement is highly beneficial. It serves the best interests of the citizens of Cass County as it resolves the ongoing litigation. The case is called Wayside Church versus Van Buren County. Anyone who owned, inherited, or held an interest in a property in Cass County that was foreclosed between the years of 2013 and 2020 may be entitled to participate in this proposed settlement. The deadline for filing that claim, a claim for that settlement class, has been extended by a month. It was August 7th, and now they have until September 5th of 2023. The process for filing a claim, again, it's very straightforward. You just go to the website, www.taxforeclosuresettlement.com. The retention of surplus proceeds is a takings without just compensation. It violates the Fifth Amendment unless there is a statutory mechanism for a former interest holder to claim surplus proceeds. Could you show the next screen? There is a statutory mechanism for former interest holders to claim surplus proceeds in the state of Michigan. We are actually going to become a model for some of those states you see up there in red.
Yeah.
That map here is from the Pacific Legal Foundation, and they have deemed that Michigan protects home equity in tax foreclosure. So that we can be proud of. We're in green. But those yellows are questionable and the reds are really bad. But I do think the state of Michigan is going to be a model because of the law changes that happened in 2020, December and January of 2021. Again, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So, with the Wayside Church versus VB County, do you know what claims were filed in it?
So they do have about a month left to
Yeah.
and I have asked the claims administrator to give me an idea of how many we have. As we have talked about, if every person does claim their excess proceeds, it'll be about $1.8 million that Cass County will pay out. Again, I don't know the exact number right now. They do have another month to go before. But I probably the next Board of Commissioners meeting, I'll have an idea of what that number is.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Is it possible to ask if the public has any questions? This is a hot topic. I mean, there was just in the United States Supreme Court case on a takings in Minnesota. So the good news is the state of Michigan is a couple years ahead of Minnesota, where the Supreme Court ruled that that was a takings Fifth Amendment violation. We are ahead of the game in Cass County. Anybody have any questions? All right.
Thank you, Hope.
Thank you.
And then we have our item B, medical assisted treatment program.
Good evening. Medically assisted treatment programs. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a history. We've been talking about doing this program since before I became sheriff in 2016. Sheriff Underwood had looked into it and many different things over the years, and we finally got to an agreement to get into the medically assisted treatment programs, and the county signed on with Wayne State University. And Matt Costello from Wayne State University is going to talk about the program and also talk about the great things that have happened with the program. Also included with the partners in this program is not just the jail and my staff, and Captain John Shoup is here from my staff. He represents the people that were working for my end. Woodlands was included, the courts, including Judge Beeler. And several people were allowed to be a part of this program, and it's been pretty successful. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt Costello, and he's going to go into how we got to where we are today.
Thank you, Sheriff. I have copies of the PowerPoint. I don't plan to talk from a PowerPoint. That's really generally what I don't do. But I would like to offer something to the comments earlier. The programming and evaluation that we're talking about were at no cost to the county commissioners, or the sheriff's office. This was done through Judge Beeler's vision and securing grant funds to pay for this work both inside the jail and for Wayne State's involvement. So for that vision, certainly Wayne State has great appreciation for Judge Beeler and the work that she did in getting this process moving forward. Who is this mine? Yep. There we go. Wayne State Center for Behavioral Health and Justice is located within the School of Social Work at Wayne State. We provide technical assistance to sites for the provision of making and helping sites make data-driven decisions on how they can move forward with programming in a variety of areas. Sorry. The area that I am working with, if I can know how to work one of these things, is the treatment ecosystem. So we have onboarded or worked with 12 separate counties in the state of Michigan for the development and expansion of MAT programming inside of the county jails. Our process is focused on 4 primary methods of evaluation for a site. And is that first and foremost is the RODS assessment, or screening. How do you address a problem if you don't have data to understand what the scope of the problem may look like? Many jails don't have a specific instrument that they use to identify a particular population and then provide targeted treatment for those individuals. The Cass County Sheriff's Office instituted the RODS assessment. This is an independent, validated assessment tool. It's not a Wayne State tool. It's not a court tool. You can go on the web and you can find it. It's a quick screening that allows, and I put an example of it here, to identify people who self-report. All right? Doesn't mean that they're eligible for programming. It's simply a self-report mechanism for an individual to be screened for further services. This is really where Woodlands played a vital part in this process. Is they would take those positive screenings, conduct the assessment with that individual, and to determine whether or not to refer that on to ACH, Advanced Correctional Health, which is the in-jail medical provider inside the Cass County Jail. This is just an example of some data that we provided for others. It's an aggregate count de-identified for other counties that we've worked with and what their positive RODS prevalence rates look like. This isn't so much for you to see about what prevalence rates looks like, it's about understanding what technical assistance looks like. Wayne State does not run this program. We have nothing to do with this program. It's the stakeholders here in Cass County that led this vision. Judge Beeler, the sheriff, ACH, Woodlands Behavioral, Cass Family Services were all integral parts of this process. If this was a process that was left up just to the sheriff's office, with all due respect to the sheriff, it would not succeed. The sheriff's office's expertise is in care and custody. Woodlands is experts in substance use services. Cass Family Services is likewise expert in that. So they were able to import those services into the jail to provide those services. So when we look at and we understand how this looks, we can understand why the importance of this program. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more. This is just some localized data. We weren't responsible. Our process with Cass County was strictly on technical assistance. So we didn't do a lot of RODS analysis, but Captain Shoup was very diligent in tracking all the data within inside the jail to keep track of what was going on. Were his deputies administering the RODS in rates that were consistent? And yes, the data shows that it was. Does it then get us to a point where we can look at positive ROD scores? So that's that next slide that you see here. There's a positive screening rate of 6%. It's not, that's a positive number in one sense, if you reflect back on the other data that we saw earlier slide of an average 16% positivity rate. So that's a positive sign for Cass County. The question becomes that I've received from some sites is, why are we doing this at all? Right, why? And again, MAT programming is for opioid-involved individuals, medication-assisted treatment for people who are using opioids. Why get into this at all? Because the law says so. It's covered under ADA, it's covered under, Your Honor would probably know it better than I would, it's protected by the right against cruel and unusual punishment. There's been litigation, successful litigation filed in the state of Michigan against other counties who did not have MAT programming. So the sheriff was a visionary in the sense of, let's get this before somebody comes knocking on our door and forces this down our throat with a consent decree or some other kind of forced kind of situation. So again, being ahead of the curve is paying its dividends. So we saw what the positive rate looked like. You know, since the inception, 103 individuals were screened positive, and of those, 17 were entered into the program. Well, you could say then, well, of 100 and some odd were screened positive, why were only 17 served? If you understand, and I'm suspecting many of you here do, length of stay becomes a critical element to this part. There are many people who book into a jail and are released within 72 hours, who then wouldn't be eligible for this programming. So there's why you would see some discrepancies in those numbers. But I think this went from 0 to 17. This was a ground-up build by the sheriff and the judge and the other members of the Cass Community Treatment Team. So it is a tremendous accomplishment. It's important to also understand about medication diversion, and the captain has done an excellent job. Diversion is not taking your medication as intended. All medications in jail, whether it be for MAT, for psychotropic, for medical reasons, is a commodity. And jails have to be very diligent in terms of monitoring and measuring and making sure people are taking whatever medication is as directed. That is doubly so with MAT medications, medication-assisted medications. There we go. And again, to the sheriff's office's credit, they didn't stick their head in the sand and say, well, let's just cross our fingers and hope that it doesn't happen. They were diligent in working with their medical provider, ACH, to make sure the medications were being taken as prescribed. And that's evidenced by the captain's notation of the one medication diversion. Very brief, very quick. I just think it's very important, thank you, to recognize, and I did bring some certificates, if I can ask the judge, or the board's indulgence here to call out some particular organizations. And I'd first obviously like to start with the sheriff. Sheriff, again, this doesn't happen without the sheriff, so again, my thanks to the sheriff and the excellent work and vision that you had in terms of getting this program going forward and moving forward. Thank you, sir. Judge Beeler, if I could bother you so much as to come up here. As I mentioned before, in efforts to be consistent with how a county wants to be fiscally responsible, again, it was the judge's vision that started this process off, and I just wanted to express my personal thanks towards it. With all due respect, she's a taskmaster. She called us into a meeting once and said, "What are you guys doing? Because I don't know what you guys are doing because I'm not getting what I want." And it was very very professional, but again, it was very well done, and that kind of vision and that kind of passion got us here today. So again, I express my personal appreciation for the judge and her vision and her enthusiasm for doing this, so.
We know that about her.
Well, it's important to recognize it. It's sometimes good to know, and it's other times good to.
Judge Beeler, before you sit down. Oh, too late.
How many are you giving out, sir?
I just have a couple more.
Well,
That way
we
we
want the
get-
pictures.
keep
So
them
when-
up there so we can get
When it's all
pictures,
finished,
yeah.
we want everybody's
Everybody in a
picture.
group and we'll take
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Bob, if you would come up from Woodlands Behavioral Health Services. Again, I just want to express as I mentioned earlier, thank you, Bob. He was part of this process from the get-go, and I want to express my appreciation because you can't have a corrections officer running MAT services inside of a jail. You need an agency like Woodlands who comes into the jail, provides those services, and more importantly, provides and plans for that reentry. If a jail does a tremendous job at providing the medication, providing the services inside the jail, but doesn't provide or plan for reentry, you set the individual up to die. Woodlands Behavioral stepped into that void and created those discharge plans for those individuals, and I think that can't be undersold because the jail can be in full compliance, but have a huge gap in terms of something not being done. So thank you, Bob, I appreciate that very much. All right, I'm sorry about this, I'm
No,
trying.
no, don't be.
Well, it's nice to have celebrations, right? It's a good thing. I didn't bring any cake, so. I'm a sweets guy. Salt, sugar. I don't know, is anybody from Cass Family Services here? I didn't see, so, Captain, maybe I could leave this for you to get to the Cass Family Services folks. Again, a lot of the folks that were coming out that Woodlands was working with, we're going to reintegrate with Cass Family Services. I'm going to give this maybe to the captain because I'd like him to come up here too, but this is for ACH, Advanced Correctional Health. It's the contracted in-jail medical provider. You can have the greatest program in the world, but if your medical provider says we're not doing that, you're stuck. So the captain has a tremendous grasp on how to manage that relationship. There can be tenuous relationships with jail medical and sheriff's office personnel. The captain was masterful in kind of working with the staff there to make sure that the relationship there stayed intact because there were some challenges or questions that were asked, appropriate, from ACH about how this was going to work and certainly Wayne State had a part in trying to help with that, but it was really the captain that led the charge with that and fostered that relationship to make sure that they understood that this is where we're going, get on board. So my thanks to you, sir. You did just a tremendous job.
We all learned a lot very quickly.
Yeah. It's like, and because I think it's important to recognize the Board of Commissioners and because every process that goes through this, yes, thank you, sir. As we think about moving forward, one of the things we work on all of our sites is about sustainability. And one of the things I would hope that you would remember from this, and hopefully this certificate is an opportunity to remember that, is to understand that this is a service that we hope to continue into the future because it's the law. I have my own personal opinions about treatment because I'm a social worker by training and by profession, but I also want to make sure that we limit the liability related to counties. I should also make mention that this certification is also recognized by the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority. It's the underwriter for a majority of the counties and jails throughout the state of Michigan. We've worked with Tom Cromartie for some years now. He's familiar with our program. He's asked us to speak and present at a conference there, which Cass County was represented at. But again, so just some sense of validity about how this process works. So if I can bring this up to you, sir, and just our appreciation to the Board of Commissioners as we recognize this program and what's gone on. So thank you, sir.
Good job.
Well, it's.
Can everybody come back up for a photo?
Yes, can we get everybody back up for our photo because this is.
Where do you like to do it?
This
Have them
is,
stand in the center of the tables.
This is good stuff.
I haven't faced the audience. It's gonna be the easiest way to take a picture.
You too, Matt.
Oh, I'm coming over.
I'm prepared, I didn't do my hair. I got on a Black Panther t-shirt.
John, can you get up there, please? Two Johns. John Shoup and John Riddell.
I'm here to take a picture, that's why I'm here.
Me too.
Those are the people that are doing the work.
All right. 1, 2, 3, cheese.
Cheese.
Yeah. Pizza.
Pizza, yeah, that's a good one. If I could just challenge one of the people that took a picture, maybe officially, if you could send it to us, so then we can post it on our social media to give us, cast some credit there.
Sure, thank you.
I know where that stands. It's like,
Okay.
it's good to see you again, so thank you. Sorry about that. Your honor, thank you. Well, I probably went over my limit, but I also want to make sure I offer the opportunity if there is any questions, concerns, thoughts, or raw feelings about the presentation.
No, great, thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. Again, it's Cass County that did all this, so, and at no cost to anybody. Well, the funders, but that's a good thing. All right, excuse me.
Nice presentation.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Moving on to number 10, committee reports. Do we have any committees that would like to report?
Yeah. I go first. Yeah. Yours will be longer than mine.
Yes, it will.
Only one that I have a significant report on for committees would be the health department. Our COVID numbers for fiscal year to date for 2023 is only 372. So that's good. And people getting vaccinated in our Dowagiac Health Department clinic is only 54. So that's good. One note is with STDs and all that, people, we had a candid discussion about it. Need to be, it's kind of weird to talk about it, but it's, we're all adults here. So talk to your children. They need to protect themselves because there are more cases of that than there is anything else, especially between a certain age demographic. So it starts in the home. I really believe that. It starts in the home because we're the examples for our future. Another reportable thing, or non-reportable, they have gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis, HIV/AIDS, and that's it. The worst one is the gift that keeps on giving, and the health department across the nation says that's not even reportable, when that's the worst one in this area, and we all know what that means. On a worse note, our county health department's dental program is in trouble, and me, as the chair of this board for Cass County and the Van Buren chair of the board, we're meeting with the director there to figure out what we're gonna do. Because just like everybody else in the country, they're hurting for money and can't find any dentists. Maybe I should have went to dental school because I'd have a really, really good job right now. Lyme disease, we've had 4 cases in our county, and 2 recently. One was one of my family members. We went all out mushroom hunting, they got Lyme disease. So spray yourself down. Other than that, I think that's all I have.
Any questions for him?
No.
Commissioner, can I go ahead?
Okay, so I attended a legislative event sponsored by the Human Service Coordinating Council, and I got to speak directly with the aides of 2 of our legislators, as well as the aide of our congressman. I attended the Michigan Works meeting, and while unemployment figures are good, 3.6 unemployment for the Tri-County region, there are still many, many job openings. A successful job fair was held last month with over 100 job seekers. I also attended a housing meeting in Lawrence sponsored by MISHDA. I did the opioid webinar last week, and Gladwin County presented their plan, and this is the 3rd one now that's presented their plans, and Gladwin County was very, very impressive. Southwest Michigan Planning Commission on August 15th, and we heard a presentation by the new planner, her name is Becca Schrag, on the materials management statute, which deeply involves county commissioners. And I sent you all information about that. I emailed it to you, and we'll likely have to discuss that at the COW. So as far as committees, I'm done there.
That wasn't that bad.
Any questions for her? Do we have any other committee reports? All right, moving on to district reports, District 2 Commissioner Lawrence.
In Wayne Township and the city of Dowagiac, again, they're still working with Pride Care as far as trying to get funding for them. So that's where they're at right now with Pride Care. The last I know is that they were contacting the owner of Pride Care to get his, what his plans are for the near future, and his plans are is to continue to fund Pride Care until the end of the year. I think they said something about that at the last meeting. But the other thing is I've been told this by my doctor, is that the hospital there, they're pretty much bankrupt. So the healthcare system, and as far as I know, they're moving people out of the building that they use for the doctors and moving them back into the hospital. And in Kalamazoo, they've closed down 3, this is what my doctor told me, 3 facilities there. The specialty type groups, so I imagine they took all those people and put them back to the hospital, Borges Hospital. So Ascension is not doing well. That's what I gathered at going on in my district.
Any questions for him? All right. District 3 Commissioner Locke.
Penn Township had News 22 there, if you guys didn't catch that. In regards to the ongoing marijuana situation over there. They're waiting to hear back on some information that they put forth, so it's kind of in a stalemate. And then at Valenia, they also are looking into ambulance service. I guess there's, from what I understood, what they said briefly was like August 25th over at Wayne, there's a group of the townships that are going to get together and discuss regarding ambulance services and see what they can do.
Any questions for him? Chair Jones?
The one thing I got is Pokagon Township Fire Department want me to let you all know they have raffle tickets that you all need to buy. They got a 450 Bushmaster, so you all can buy a raffle ticket and put my name on it.
Your name?
Yeah, that's all I got.
I don't even know what that is.
It's a really good hunting rifle.
Oh.
Sure we need.
Any questions for him? Moving on, District 5 Commissioner Howie.
Nothing to report at this time.
Okay, thank you. District 6 Commissioner Barrera.
Milton Township, they have a couple of RFPs that they approved for a door to be installed in the facility, and then a new projector and sound to be installed as well. They are looking for a new zoning board administrator, or excuse me, someone to join the ZBA. So we are asking if anybody's registered in that area, registered voter, to please take a look at that position and see if that's something that would interest you. As far as Ottawa Township, I think the biggest thing that probably came about, there was a couple things that probably came up, but the one that was being discussed most was the amendment to the ordinance regarding the tents, tables, and canopies, specifically over at Eagle Lake, and I believe that they approved that to also now include chairs. That's what I got.
Any questions for him? All right, District 7 Commissioner Marquetti.
Yes, the big happening in District 7 was US 12 garage sale. I understand there was one mishap, but from what I saw, there didn't seem to be the crowds that there were in the past, and Saturday's rain did inhibit some shoppers. The Edwardsburg Food Pantry, and I serve on that board, has seen an uptick in clients, especially in the time slot of 5 to 6 p.m. on the first and third Tuesdays of the month. On September 16th, the Chamber is hosting a fall festival and art show from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. at the fire station. There will be 5 food trucks, a bounce house with obstacle course, big bubbles, and music. Also, I do want to mention, even though it isn't in my district, but the medical care facility picnic is Saturday. It's from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I've been in the past, and it's a real good picnic. That's it.
Any questions for him? All right, District 8 Commissioner Lee.
So Calvin Township had another interesting meeting, a lot to do with a person that was shooting excessively, who had looked into like wanting to open up a shooting range. And so there's a lot of people that were neighbors to that came and were pretty adamantly upset with that. But the report was, look, if it's an issue, if you think he's using it as a business, you have to report that to the police department. As it is now, it's not a business. So that was a pretty big thing that happened there in Calvin. As far as Mason Township, they finished their track, so like they put in a pickleball court and they put in a basketball court and they finished the track. It looks gorgeous. You should come over and see it. It's really nicely done. And that's all I have.
Any questions for him? All right, and then I do not have a report. So moving on to number 12, the administrator's report.
I got a couple things. I got a quick update on the historical courthouse. We are finally in the home stretch with the USDA. The application is now at the national office. I have been told that they anticipate completing their review the week of the 28th. Once approved, funding would be distributed from there. So we are looking at construction commencing on or around the middle of September would be our best guess, with a completion date of early summer 24. Website redesign is, we talked about that a few times, but that's actually coming along really nicely, and we are looking at having that launch towards the end of this month. So keep a lookout for that. And I think that's about all I update on for now, unless there's any questions.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. Thank you. I liked your report. There was a lot there.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
Anybody else?
On the web design, is it, the counties that had a couple townships wondering about how's that going for them?
Yeah, I mean, our website, this particular part is focused pretty heavily on just kind of the county's portion, but I know we have continued to have some discussions about, are there additional services we could look to maybe offer in local townships and villages, things like that. We kind of were doing that in coordination with looking at kind of our IT programs as well. So I don't have any, I guess, thing to announce yet, but it's something we're taking a real strong look at to see if there's something we can do to help out.
Anything else? All right, thanks, Matt. Moving on, number 13, finance report.
My report's in the packet. I just wanted to note a few things. So an RFP was done for audit services. I was very excited to see those are in the packets, so you guys can review those. Love working with our auditors. We've had some of our county partners that get rolled into our audit also join with Yo and Yo, so it was very nice that Yo and Yo came in at the lowest bid. As you'll see in just a little bit, or if you might have saw in your packets already. Another thing that was due this month to the state of Michigan is the cost allocation plan that was completed. I certified that the other day, and they will be sending me a hard copy in the mail, so I'm just waiting for that. And then you will see there are some budget adjustments in there. We've seen quite a lot of those. They will continue, and we will keep seeing those. Just I want to make sure everything's looking good as we get very close to the end of the year.
Any questions for him? Thank you. Number 14, veterans report.
Good evening, everybody. Excuse me. The
The veteran contact for the month of June was 170. We had an increase from June to July in veterans' benefits of $80,335.72, which makes a grand total that we have had for the last 2 years of $3,077,179.63. Kind of proud of that number for our veterans in the county. That's huge.
Yes, it is.
You know, that's just huge revenue that they now have that they're able to take and spend within our county and make their lives better. We will have the fair was great. We had a lot of people come through the booth. Of course, we share our booth with the VFW here in town. Excuse me. We'll have a booth also at the medical care for the picnic on Saturday. Let me get through these two. This is going to tug at my heart a little bit. So, the Veterans Office was very blessed this past week. We had a veteran give us 4 burial plots in East Union Cemetery in Porter Township. They've had these plots for years. The individual that gave them to us is now at the medical care facility, and he is not going to have need for these, so he granted them to our office, which is amazing, which is really amazing. It will be used for indigent veterans or veterans that do not have the financial means to lay themselves to rest. Which, when you think about it, there's a lot of people out there that do have that. I would also like to thank Palmer's Funeral Home in South Bend, who went out of their way and above and beyond and brought one of our veterans back to Cass so that we could lay him to rest a week ago Monday. I'd like to thank Pastor Oliver of the Pleasant View Church here in Cass, who gave up of his time and came out and did. I'd also like to thank the VFW here in Cass. They did the salute for our vet. In the past 2 years, I've been able to help enroll 558 veterans in medical care. Off the last GDX report, that's huge. These are veterans that didn't think that they had any benefits or were told they didn't. So that's a huge number for our veterans in the county. Does anybody have questions?
I have a comment. I'm the chair of the board for the Cass County Veterans Soldiers and Sailors Relief, or there's other names that we use. And me and Kareem talked earlier. When I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, we had people from the community send me care packages and letters and cards. My mother, oh my God, newspaper clippings, cartoons, got them all in the box. You know, that's really good support, but there's also a need for the families of the veteran that's overseas. So we're going to bring to our board and bring to this board, but it's not going to cost us any money. So it's just going to be a courtesy thing for this board that we're going to use our contacts in the National Guard, Reserves, and active duty to find out who is actually deployed overseas in combat or a significant event in the military. And I would like Cass County to send the spouse a thank you for your sacrifice, and then send the soldier thank you for your service. You know, something simple like a card. You know, and that would go a long way in boosting the morale of that soldier, that knowing that his county or her county is recognizing them and their sacrifice, and then the family, that would go a long way. So we're going to talk about that in our next veterans meeting, you know, so I think that'd be a good thing. You agree?
Oh, I think it'd be a great thing when you're overseas and you're away from everybody to know that your county has that respect of what you're doing and is supporting you.
We're going to call it Sacrifice and Service Award, or recognition for the family and for the soldier, or Marine, Airman, Navy, and all that. Thanks, Green.
Any other questions?
Anybody else?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, up next will be county partners. Do we have any county partners would like to speak?
Here's Jake.
Jake from the Conservation District? Yep.
Good evening, everyone. It's been a little while. For those who don't know, my hours were cut to 10 hours at the end of May from 40, and I had to sacrifice my health insurance due to our funding issues. But I'm not here to talk about me. I'm just explaining why I haven't been here. So when I took this job as Executive Director of the Conservation District in December, I knew there was risk, I knew there were funding issues, and I knew I had to work with state and local partners to try and find solutions. So why did I take that job? The mission statement. I believed in the mission of our district, which is to protect and enhance Cass County's natural resources by providing educational and technical services to all landowners. This is about future generations. This isn't just about us in this room. This is about your kids, your grandkids, and future generations. I then looked at the Cass County Master Plan to see if you guys were aligned, and this is dating from 2014, but that was the most recent one when I had looked. And right in your purpose statement, there's to encourage a sustainable economy that provides prosperity for all and without sacrificing the county's rich natural resources and environmental integrity. Later on in the master plan, long-term interests, protecting and enhancing the overall character of the county, protecting the quality of life, protecting natural resources, including farmland, forest lands, wetlands, water resources, and wildlife. And then later in your master plan at the Future Vision town hall meetings, natural features is what residents were most proud of. And for future visions, natural resources was what was most important. So I say all that in the context of the letter I sent you all on Tuesday at my board's direction regarding some serious support for next year. So I'm just going to read this letter real quick. I've got my timer here, so I'll stay under 5, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. This was to County Administrator Newton and all the commissioners. On behalf of the Cass County Conservation District and under direction of my Board of Directors, I'm officially requesting $125,000 in funding for the district for fiscal year '24, specifically to keep the SCSC program sustainable. When I introduced myself at the first BOC meeting I attended in December, I knew the Conservation District wasn't adequately funded and knew we had to work together to continue serving the county's conservation needs. We are lucky to live in a place blessed with an abundance of natural resources, whether it's the soil our farmers depend on or the clean waters so many enjoy and take for granted. While it took time to peel back the onion, it became clear over the first few months that the SCSC program, which we're the county enforcing agency of, has been operating in the red in recent history. To be clear, the Conservation District would like to continue as the CEA for the SCSC program. However, we need to get our staff to market rate wages and benefits and then staff accordingly so that we can adequately support the growth and development that Cass County is experiencing. Staffing accordingly will allow us to act in a more proactive manner instead of a reactive one, and is something that's core to our mission. When I realized the SCSC problem was causing some of the financial issues, I took time to learn more about the things we were doing, make sure we were doing things to the best of our abilities with the resources available. I met with the Drain Commissioner March 31st to learn about the program, how it was operated prior to us. I learned that we were indeed doing the best we could with the staff and resources we had. On April 4th, I met with Matt Newton to discuss funding needs for the district. Additionally, we discussed other county level support, such as county vehicles to eliminate mileage expenses for inspectors, getting on the county health insurance plan for fiscal year '24, and other county benefits such as retirement plans, IT support, etc. At that meeting, I was asked to provide 5 years of SCSC financials as well as copies of our last 2 mandatory biennial audits, which I promptly provided. On May 24th, I, along with our SCSC committee, met with Matt Newton, Commissioners Leyland, Marchetti. We left that meeting feeling really optimistic as $80,000 in surplus cannabis monies was offered up pending a BOC vote to help us through this fiscal year. On June 7th, Commissioner Leyland informed us that the county wanted to meet with the Drain Commissioner and get info from other counties regarding administering SCSC on behalf of the state, so the potential cannabis funding was tabled at that time. I followed up a few weeks later, and as of the end of June, there were no updates. It was still in progress. So, as you know, my predecessor had requested $50,000 last year for a water quality technician, something the county with 122 public lakes desperately needs. However, that was done last minute, and that request was denied. To be clear, this request for $125,000 is only to fund and sustainably run the SCSC program. with the CD serving as a CEA. We'd love to add a water quality tech too, as we're getting lots of feedback regarding concern of local lake health. However, we first need to see what happens with the future of SCSC and CAS. Lastly, I want to remind everyone that our program will be audited by Eagle next year, and if they determine we're not adequately funded and/or enforcing this program, it will be at the state's discretion to decide who administers this in the future, which we all believe will be far more costly to the county and its taxpayers. We appreciate your budgetary considerations for fiscal year '24. Thank you.
Yeah, then that 120, like the last one you said from your predecessor was 50,000, and then now it's 125,000 just for the SCSC program.
Yep.
When we do our budget for the county and our budget adjustments for our fiscal year, we take into account grants and things that, and I think you already answered the question with the vehicle and maybe staffing or something like that in yours, you know? So what about grants? Is there anything that you all can do?
There's no, since it's an enforcing agency, we can't get grants for that program. Our MEP technician's under a grant. She's on her own island and world. There's a $40,000 grant from the state, which was my grant in theory, but there's no money. There's no grant money at all for SCSC. It's purely permit driven. That's how we meet payroll, and we didn't think we were going to meet it, and so that's when my hours were reduced.
And if the state takes over, you're a state mandated?
Yeah, Part 91 is mandated by the state, by Eagle, so.
By Eagle, by
Right.
the people that's going to get rid of you and then take over and charge more money.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. So only 13 conservation districts of the state actually do this. It's primarily the drain commissioners of the 83 counties. So we're kind of an unusual county in that way. But we're also doing it for a fraction of the cost.
What do we look like in comparison to other areas?
It's really hard to do apples to apples because of the amount of lakes we have versus a lot of counties don't, and that's where a lot of the problems are. So this is just about SCSC. This is not about myself or our MEP technician. So I'm just trying to make sure that everyone here is aware. Whatever happens, happens, but I wanted to communicate it on behalf of my board.
All right, bro. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions for him?
How many people do you have running that program?
Right now, there are 2 full-time people. There probably should be at least 4, because we're supposed to be inspecting sites monthly. We have about 200 active permits in the county, so that's a lot of inspections, and then that's doesn't allow for a proactive, go out and find issues. Issues find us. We get the complaints, we get the calls. Plenty of people comply and apply for permits correctly, but it's only 2 people.
So, and our fees are pretty high compared to other people?
The fees were they raised last year or the year before? They were raised recently.
Last year, I think.
Yeah, so the board did not believe that was a viable option because the fees were just raised. Yep. And we are, for full disclosure, we're paying an inspector $17 an hour to drive his personal vehicle around and do this job. So we're not taking care of the people that they're doing a good job. These are really smart people that are continuing their education in wetlands delineation and the science that they're actually doing. They're not just, checking boxes on a piece of paper. They really know their stuff. And so I want to get them to market rate wages, which is what Eagle will ultimately do if we don't figure it out.
Can I ask what correlates to market rate wages?
We had talked when we met about county wages, right? And so I think getting in at the ground floor of those would be adequate.
No, I'm not saying, I guess I'm just looking at, for the 125,000, and I know you have permit fees on top of that. You figure with the permit fees, another 50 somewhere in there, 175, that's pretty sizable amount of money for 2 people.
Well, no, this is about this is about getting our people to market rates and then staffing accordingly so that people from various townships aren't calling saying, why aren't you on this lake? Why aren't you? We really need 2 more Pats and Corys. It's about because that's part of the audit that we are going to fail. because we don't have the manpower to inspect sites at the frequency we are supposed to.
That's, I guess I wanted to just clarify.
Yep,
where
no,
that was.
ask away.
Any other questions? Thanks, Jake.
Yep, thanks for your time.
Any other county partners present? Don't believe so, so we'll move on to elected officials. Who would like to start? Genevieve.
Is it okay, Becca? They all turned to me, so. I guess since I wasn't here last week, they let me go first, so thank you. As far as, I just wanted to report, one exciting thing is we were able to meet with Ambrosia today and talk about our Sobriety Month event that we're sponsoring with Woodlands and CASA. And we had gotten ran the movie past Matt because we didn't want there to be any problems, and it's going to be Super Mario, and he didn't think there was any problems with that. So we were excited, though, that we could get a newer movie for a pretty low license fee. So I think it's going to be a fun event. So Ambrosia is going to help us publicize it, and the thought behind it is that we'll have so many cars will be allowed to come, and then we would get them a ticket that would get them a hot dog, popcorn, and a drink. And so it'll be a good family event where they can bring kids and, and also something that we can then, say Cass County is really family friendly and we're doing something to support sober activities. So I think all around it's going to turn out to be nice. So look for information about that in coming months. And then as far as everything else is concerned, I know the big thing on everybody's mind is the budget. I just really want to say that I think we're lucky in this county and we take it for granted sometimes how well, I know that it seems like sometimes we don't work well together, but when I visit and talk to judges from other counties, our county actually does get along pretty well. We have different personalities and different opinions, and that's okay. But we're really lucky because we're small enough here that most people know each other and we can have a phone call and talk with one another, and that is not the norm across the state because in bigger counties, you've got so many people involved, you can't just do that. So I guess I would just like to say that to begin with. Secondly, on the budget, a lot of work has gone into the budget, a lot of work on the part of you all, a lot of the work on the part of us all, the elected officials, and of course your county administrator, finance director, and all of their team. So I just don't want that to get lost in all of this because sometimes it feels like people are thinking that various people are not, engaging in this process, and there's been engagement by, in my opinion, everyone in this process, and so that really makes for a good budgetary situation because maybe I'm egotistical, but I don't think anybody knows the courts as well as I do. I don't think anybody knows the jail as well as the sheriff does. I don't think anybody knows county administration probably as well as Matt and his team do. I think we all have our expertise in our different areas, so I think it's important that we try to rely on those things. So to the nitty-gritty, I know that there is a what is being called a balanced budget option on the table that would eliminate 11 positions, some of which are filled positions in the county, not just vacancies. And right now for the courts, we have 4 empty positions that I know of. One we did not ask to be filled during fiscal year '24, so we already eliminated that off of our proposed budget. There's 3 filled positions that are proposed to be cut in the balanced budget option. And the thing that I just want to emphasize, and I know what people are concerned about because I'm concerned about it too, because I am fiscally conservative. But I know in the next year for certain that we're going to have 3 retirements in the courts. So the notion to me that we would take 3 filled positions and eliminate those jobs for people that are currently working for us that have institutional knowledge and that could potentially help us cover those areas is just a little baffling to me because on paper, it looks like we operate at a deficit and we don't. And we're always going to have retirements and people that leave. And so if we pass a balanced budget option, the one that's on the table right now, what it's going to mean is that we're lower staffed than we need to be, and we're going to end up with a surplus at the end of the year. And, that's concerning to me because we haven't sat down and talked about, as a group, the elected officials and the departments, about, well, if we did have to make cuts in filled positions, what positions should be cut because of mandated versus not mandated services. And I understand that we always run into a crunch at budget time, and I'm not faulting anyone. Matt and his team have worked very hard. We've had numerous meetings with them where they've spent a lot of their time going over our various line items. But these things are all really complicated, and so I don't really know why randomly in different areas, particular positions of mine were chosen to be cut. If I were going to be asked to eliminate positions because that's what I have to do, number one, I would not cut them from places where we get 66%, the friend of the court. I would look to cut them elsewhere because that would make more financial sense to me. And I'm not criticizing the fact that for budgetary purposes, those numbers were chosen. I'm just saying, we would have to make this plan together if we're going to eliminate filled positions. And that, we haven't had time to do that. We haven't had time to sit down and say, okay, yes, the mandate is we have to get rid of 11 positions, and some of them are filled, so how are we going to move things around in the county? So I just would hope that when you're thinking about what we're going to do, if the goal is to reduce our full-time equivalents, because every organization has a chart of those, it would seem like we would start working now to get that done for next year so that then we could, have a plan for how we're going to carry out all of the services our citizens expect. Because if it ends up being, for example, that this balanced budget option gets adopted and my line items for particular areas are positions that I have to let go, then if those positions are let go and I can't carry out what I need to do, then I'm going to put signs up that say, we can't do these things. Because I haven't been involved in those decisions to determine where would be the best place to make those cuts. I'm not saying admin hasn't involved me, they have very much so, but we never got into the nitty-gritty of saying, okay, this is the particular position you've got to, cut, and this is what we're going to do. There's union contracts involved. There's a lot that goes into this, and I appreciate that all of you appreciate that, but we just have not, delved into the details, and the devil's in the details, right? And we've already have some experiences over recent years where things were done and the details were not confirmed, and then we're paying for it later. So I'm just asking, I totally understand the desire for us to be very fiscally responsible because this is not our money. We're fiduciaries, we're stewards of our taxpayers' money. But I just feel like, your admin team has done a great job of working with all of us to figure out where we could make cuts. They've recommended a proposed recommended budget. And like I said, if the goal is that next year we'll be down that many positions, then I think that would be the mandate that we would all work together to accomplish, instead of it being like, we're going to cut the money and we don't even know whose positions we're cutting at the present time. And then we're going to roll that out October 1. It's, already August 17th. It's just, it's not the message I like to give our employees, because I would like us to spend thought and time figuring those details out. And with everything else that's going on with all of us running our operations day to day, those details have not been determined. So I thank you for your time, and I thank you for, I know that you have tough decisions to make, and it's not that I, am saying we should just spend money and not have any accountability. But I feel, at least for the courts, I started this process by writing you all a detailed memo at the beginning of budget season, telling you all of our mandated requirements. I came in requesting that less positions for the courts be filled for the coming year. I made cuts everywhere I could. The state, took over our JIS fees, which saved over $60,000, knowing that they were mandating additional education and training for the courts next year. And then the next thing was that all the training got cut significantly because the state thought they were throwing us a bone, taking over those $60,000 in fees so that we could pay for some of that mandated training. Again, I understand why the training's cut, and I can live with that. But, there's nowhere else I have to cut to be able to say, okay, I can save those 3 filled positions in my area by October 1st. There's nowhere for me to make a proposal for that. So, some of these things are mandated, and as I already told you in full transparency, like on the institutional care, if I have to lock up some kids next year, I'm going to have to come back and ask for that money. I can't prevent that. But I'm willing for budgetary purposes to say, let's make the number really low. And luckily, over the last many years, we have kept that number really low. Really not because we want to, because our officers would like us to take some of these kids and get them some treatment and help, but because there are no facilities around the state accepting kids. So anyway, I just appreciate your consideration of these important matters.
Thanks, Judge.
Good to see everybody again tonight. At a future meeting here, not too distant future, I would like to address you on another topic other than budget and talk a little bit about some of our major cases and so forth, such as the Vandalia shooting and so forth, which the Sheriff's Department and other agencies in my office really collaborated to make sure that that guy who was shooting at cars and at people and so forth was brought to justice. But I think that's for another meeting. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about the budget, which I think is obviously what's front and center here, as it should be today. I am proud as the longest serving elected official in this room and in this county, and I know as the longest elected prosecutor in the history of Cass County to have been through this process many times, 20 years now that I've done this and so forth. And I'm certainly proud of my staff, particularly my administrative assistants and office managers, Cindy Peters and Raven Bateman and now Amanda Smigo, for helping me through that process. And certainly our office has not been alone. I can say consistently we have had conservative and fiscally responsible commissioners, including obviously this group, as well as elected officials and departmental heads that work consistently and very effectively to make sure that we do the right thing and that we have a balanced budget at the end of every fiscal year and so forth, and that we are in the black. And, and just one particular example of my office, and certainly this is something that I know that every other elected office could show similar numbers, if they have them, and I know that this is the case, but I just want to pass on in regard to my office in the last 20 years. We've been under budget every year except for 1 year when we were about $1,200 under budget, but with the exception of that 1 year, in the last 20 years, my office has been proud of the fact that we've saved over $500,000 for the county by the end of the year as far as a budget, because like every other office, we make sure that we are fiscally responsible. And also, as Judge Beeler indicated, there is a reality that every budgetary year in every department, we have to budget for each employee that we're expecting to be there, but invariably there are vacancies, there are people that leave, there are retirements and so forth, which again results at the end of every year in a surplus in the black. And again, in those 20 years, I think it's without exception, with perhaps maybe one, that we have ended at the end of the year in the black, again with the surplus. And that is reflected also by the fact that our unfunded liability, our unassigned funds, I should say, actually have grown. In 2012, there were $4 million, $4.5 million. In September of 2022, they were $9 million. I only have one copy of this. This comes from our own audits that show these numbers. I'll pass this around and certainly get copies of it. And I appreciate Judge Beeler. She's the one that actually prepared those numbers. So, again, I want to really emphasize, this is not a time to panic. We're going to be okay. Well, we've got fiscally responsible people in charge. We've got fiscally responsible people in each agency, and we're going to be fine at the end of next fiscal year. And I expect fully that we'll be standing here at the end of next year saying that we are once again in the black. But I also want to point out something that is really important, I think, to keep in mind and not to forget. Because we are tasked by law as to what we do and how we look at numbers and how we consider things. And I also indicate to each of you, every year that I've been here, we have started with a budget, including this current year and the proposed number one budget. We are fiscally in the black. Now, I've heard the term used that this is a deficit budget, but it's not. And I really want to point to you to the statute that defines this, and that's MCL 141.435, that says when considering a budget, what your budget is, it's required by law that you consider the unassigned funds that are in county government. And this, right now, our unassigned funds surplus is $9 million. And by the statute that I just described, which again says, again, that you have to consider that in determining whether or not your budget is balanced or not, or in the black, that it's required by law to consider that. So certainly, even with I think we're now down to right around $2 million as far as the quote-unquote deficit, and that's, again, far below the $7 million or the $9 million that we have in our unassigned funding. So again, we are presenting both of these budgets that you're going to see are going to be budgets that are in the black, that are balanced by law. The second one, however, I would emphasize, is something we've never done before because we've never had to do it before, and we don't need to do it this year. But it is a budget that, as Judge Beeler talked about, and I think she explained a lot of the pain of that would hurt our county services and what we do for the public, and really important things such as providing public safety and law enforcement, again, which is again in many other areas that we provide. I think it's important to remember that having a rainy day fund is a good thing. And, I'm certainly a lifelong conservative, fiscally responsible. I don't even say the word Republican, but that's, and I think many of the people in this room are that. And I love that we have what I might call in layman's terms a really strong $9 million rainy day fund. And it's important to but it's also important to keep in mind that the job of county government is to provide services and not to simply grow the fund balance. And this proposed deficit is really, it's just a paper one, as it has been every other of the 20 years I've been here. And out of the last 10 years, we haven't used the fund balance other than one occasion. As the document I just passed around, it's continued to grow. We heard recently at a meeting, and administration, talked about the fact that, again, and maybe I'll back up even a little bit as I kind of wind down and conclude here. Administration has asked all of us, as well as have you, and I think rightfully so, asked us to trim our sails to see where can we cut. And each of the elected offices have done that. I have no doubt that our departments have done that as well. And again, we have trimmed those sails, and we have brought the ultimate amount that we're asking in this year's budget down considerably. And again, we're going to be okay. I would note that our administration did tell us at a recent meeting, because we switched from the defined benefit to the defined contribution, we knew and we expected that there's going to be a 2 or 3 or 4 year blip because the costs go up a little bit and then they come back down again. And I think that was explained as part of the reason why there's a little bit of a tighter budget this time around. So you ask yourself, what is a rainy day fund for? What is a $9 million unfunded or unencumbered amount for? And that's to get us through the rainy times, the tough times. And that's, and this isn't something that is permanent. This, as administration said, it's a blip of 2 or 3 or 4 years, and it's not anything close to the $9 million surplus that we have. So, bottom line, I just ask that you consider those things. Let's not panic. We're going to be fine. We're all fiscally responsible, and your employees and your elected officials and you, I know, will make sure that is what happens. And I would encourage you to adopt the first budget. And again, I don't want to use, they're both, again, balanced budgets. But I ask that you accept the first balanced budget and not the second one, which I think causes undue and unnecessary suffering. And again, having been here for 20 years, I'm confident that we'll be fine. Yes.
I'm glad you put out that first one, because a lot of people only look at that second one. So thanks for putting that out there. So the sheet you gave us, that's a lot of numbers, but it don't really tell us. And it looks good, but it's $500,000 over a 20-year period.
Right. That comes out to about $25,000 per year that we've been under budget.
But and this year, so if I'm looking at it right, not this year, but 21, 22, it was $18,000 savings total.
Correct.
That's what. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Not because I was adding them up, and I'm like, got kind of confused with all the numbers.
And I would mention, Chair Jones, that the very bottom line, on the copy that I had, I crossed it out where I've indicated what we were anticipating in our budget at my office would be at the end of this year. And that was a few months ago. It's not going to be that amount, but it's going to be pretty considerable because, that was projected with not being able to fill, 2 crucial positions that I was just, trying my best to fill. Unfortunately, we were able to fill those positions. So that'll be significantly lower than what that bottom line says, but it's still going to be quite a bit, so.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
What they said. But actually, the administration's proposed budget digs deep. We've been through a lot of things, we've talked about it a lot, it digs deep, but we can live with what it's proposing. So that is what we would like to move forward with. Once again, as Judge Beeler alluded to, that the other budget, I'm not even going to reference it as anything else, because as Prosecutor Fitz, they are both balanced budgets. But the other budget, the cuts were made in positions that we didn't have any say in as elected officials. It was just, we're going to cut here, we're going to cut here. One of those was in the jail. And the jail has got to have 23 positions by recommendation for the Department of Corrections. That was done in 1991. If we were to have that study done again today, I am very confident they would make that number higher. Their last audit of us at the jail recommended having 2 posts instead of 1 post. That means 2 people have to be mandated at a post. And we currently have a person at that second post most of the time. But if we have anybody on watch, it's called watch because they're self-harm watch, or if we have a mentally ill patient or inmate, they should be patients, by the way, not inmates. In the jail, we man that post, but otherwise we don't have to. It is recommended that we do have somebody there 24/7, so that will increase the number of positions. And MMRMA has offered to come in and do a study for us based on those numbers as well, and I'm confident they would recommend those positions be increased. So my recommendation, if it was brought to my attention, wouldn't have been to talk about cutting the jail, it would be talking about cutting in other places. But I understand they were trying to make do with what they had at the time, and came up with what you ordered them to do. So, but it would create a deficit in our jail, and there was also a road position to be eliminated in that budget. So, once again, as Judge Beeler referred, that should be something to be brought to the elected officials to discuss, because we had no discussion in that other budget other than when it was presented last week. So, a couple other things. I just had a person quit today from my road patrol, going to St. Joe County for more money, defined benefit contribution guaranteed, and no, it doesn't have to pay for health insurance. I haven't figured that one out yet, but because the state mandates that there be some type of copay unless they're using the cap, and they're underneath that cap. But I haven't found out if St. Joe County's done that. But those are the 3 reasons they said they were going to St. Joe County, and it's a shorter drive for them to go to work. But I also had another person come to me saying he's going to get out of the profession. So he doesn't want to be a cop anymore. And those 2 things just happened today. So kind of saw them coming maybe a little bit. Had some rumors out there, but they officially came to me today. Good news is I have a guy starting the police academy on Monday. Found a person that could pass the tests and was willing to be part of Cass County Sheriff's Office, and he starts on Monday, so that's some good news. That being said, like I said, the proposed administrator's budget is one that, I assume that was proposed, is one we can live with. Training and equipment are a concern. We have to have training for our people because we got to be held to standards. And if you don't train your people, your liability goes up. Because if they're not trained in what they're doing and they make a mistake, the first thing they look at is training. And you can ask MMRMA about that. So, but we can live within what's been recommended at this time. I've been really trying to dwell on this a little bit because I just got some news a few minutes ago, but I am going to go ahead and say this because I think it's appropriate. Tri-Care Ambulance is shutting down at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Oh, wow.
So there's some meetings to be discussed. This is confirmed by the medical control director. So just learned about this. It was right after you guys commented on it, but I thought you should know about that. Thank you. Bad note. That's not good.
Evening, Commissioners. Just wanted to let you know, we do have some localized flooding going on right now. A couple of the lakes. We also have a road closure, Dowagiac, Downey Street. Yes, that's because of me. But we're working through that. Getting some calls because, it's disrupting and then people worried about bus routes and things of that nature. So I'm working with the Road Commission. And we're going to team up with St. Joe County. Since Bob isn't here, I'll just go ahead and speak for him. They're going to team up with St. Joe County and see if we can attack this together to keep the costs in line. So anyway, so it's Silver Creek. So Ryan, if you get those calls, move them along.
Happily.
A little bit of flooding on Shavehead too. So if you get those, RJ, move them along. Budget. Just want to let you guys know, most of you know, maybe some of you don't, your electeds meet informally. And we were asked to make cuts, which the departments did. Then this board asked administration to prepare a budget, and we met. After looking at that, after we made those cuts, I'll classify that as interesting conversation. However, at the end, we were prepared today to come in and to support administration's budget. So it's my understanding your department heads and elected officials do return money to your budget, even your drain office, which my budget is so lean, I'm embarrassed. How embarrassed? My office supply budget is $80. I spend more than that at home. So I want you to just keep it in context what these electeds ahead of me spoke about, because of that and a lot more is true. And another point I want to hit on quickly, since Sheriff brought up the guy going over to St. Joe County, we got too much turnover occurring in Cass County. We really do. And it's not like our wages are totally out of whack. Might be some isolated cases here and there. So we need to pay attention to that too. Because in business, they realize what that cost is. Sometimes in government, it's hard to quantify that cost. And in small departments, it becomes more catastrophic. So I just want you guys to understand that. Thank you.
I increased it to 100.
It was a point of levity. It's not a dig at your finance director.
I have a comment on some of the people that brought up that the elected officials didn't have an opportunity to get together and discuss where or whatever, and everybody in this county knows my position that I'm completely against cutting any positions. But when we passed unanimously in January a balanced budget option, that was the elected officials' opportunity to do exactly what was said that they didn't have time to do. So January, February, March, April, May, June, July, at least 7 months. That was that opportunity for them to get together and decide what positions. And when they presented that to us for that third option, because we have the administrator's option, then we have the second option that everybody's talking about with the 11 positions. The third option is the one that we received. And that didn't have, I don't think, any cuts or anything like that, because I had told them not to.
That would have been the $3.4 million when they came back.
$3.4 million.
There were
Yeah.
There were 2 positions.
Yeah.
One was Max Deputy Administrator, and one was a split position over at the courts that, it's a 60-40 split, so they kind of worked in 2 different areas. Both of those were willingly gave up and part of the department requested.
And I'm not saying that to start any arguments or
No, I
fights,
just wanted to
but
clarify that.
yeah, that was the opportunity there. All right, that's
Yeah,
it.
I think it was roughly about 600,000, between 600 and 700,000 of that first initial one, and then after there was that, task to try to see where cuts could happen. That was about 600, 700,000 in part requested that came.
Yeah. All right, that's all I have.
Any unfinished business?
Nope.
All right, moving on to 18, new business. We've got the item A appointments, there's 5 of them. Is there any discussion, any of the 5?
That board met and we all agree.
It's
and
all recommended from
It's
the
all
appointments
recommended from the
committee, so
appointments
if nobody
committee.
has any issues, we'll push that forward to the next board meeting?
Yep.
Okay. Then item B, MDARD Rural Readiness Grant, Housing Study. This is Sarah from Market Van Buren.
Afternoon. Oh, no, evening. We're after 5 o'clock.
It works.
It works, yeah. Hello, we'll start with that. Oh, thank you. I'm here today to talk with you all about a grant opportunity. What it boils down to is an ask of the commission to be willing to consider listing Cass County as a co-applicant on a letter of intent for this grant application, not asking for a commitment of funds or administration, no fiduciary responsibility. We'll talk more about this in a minute, but essentially being able to list the county as a co-applicant on this grant opportunity would increase the competitiveness. And I think it will be of interest to the county because it's an opportunity that's been a topic of discussion for a while. So in front of you is just an attachment that kind of summarizes this grant opportunity. It's the MDARD Rural Readiness Grant. It provides $50,000 up to $50,000 for qualified communities. Cass County was not eligible for this grant in round 1, which is why we didn't talk about it a couple months ago. But they changed the eligibility requirements, and now the whole of Cass, with the appropriate argument, is eligible for pursuing these grant funds. As it's proposed right now, what we would be looking at is a housing study that's comprised of 2 elements. The first is a target market analysis. And what this does is look at the gap between supply and demand for housing. We all know there's a shortage of housing right now. But when we go to the state to pursue grant funds, they want data that backs up how big this gap actually is. The other thing that this study would do would it actually quantifies demand. So we would look at total number of units and types of units. Does our community really need McMansions, or do we need more smaller single-family homes? Do we need apartments? Do we need condos? Do we need tiny homes? The other thing is it would allow for the development of an action plan, which looks at things on the county level to figure out where zoning, planning, other things like that may not align with market demand. So the example, if we go back to tiny houses, if we do this study, we're shaking our heads about tiny homes.
Once you get done, I'll tell you about tiny homes.
Okay. But if this study were to come out and say, like, you know what, there is demand in our community for houses that are under 1,000 square feet, it's totally possible that local township ordinances won't allow for that. And so this would be an opportunity to present mechanisms by which townships could address those ordinance impediments to allow for housing that meets resident needs. We're asking for the county to be a co-applicant on this letter of intent because the project would equally benefit each municipality. The goal would be every municipality in the county, township, city, village would get a report that comes out of this that specifically looks at housing needs within their jurisdiction. We'd be looking at addressing the countywide shortage together, and that would make the application more competitive. This is just a letter of intent. A draft or example of what that might look like is included in the packet. We have to submit the letter of intent by August 31st. If the state likes the application, they would invite us to continue the application process September 25th, and then applications would be due November 2nd. It would be our expectation that we would be invited to proceed with this if we were able to partner with Cass County. Van Buren County was eligible in the first round. They pursued something very similar to this and were invited to proceed. Project cost, again, we're not asking for any funding commitment right now. We're anticipating it would not exceed $100,000, which would be $50,000 match, $50,000 from the grant. It would be our intention to look at both public and private sources for that match. But again, that's a cost not to exceed. It's quite likely that cost could come down. So I'll pause there and ask if there are any questions about the grant, the program, or
Yes, ma'am.
nodding in tiny homes.
Well, yeah. Well, with the match, you said if we partner with you, you said it might look like $100,000 with a $50,000 match.
Yes.
And you're going to look at private sector. So if we partner and it's more than $100,000 and that's not part of our budget, because that's the biggest thing right now, are we hooked and can't, is that, it's a done deal?
No, sir. No. So the $100,000 would be a cost not to exceed, and the listing the county as a co-applicant on this grant does not require you to make any financial contributions whatsoever. So the intention would be that the county, that Market Van Buren would hold the fiduciary responsibility and the reporting and administration associated with the grant.
So we're just doing it for points for the county's cooperation. Yeah, that's good.
Now, if we were invited to proceed in this and the county, I don't know, one of our commissioners wins the lottery and decides to donate it to the county and there's a windfall, we would certainly welcome a conversation about matching funds. But we've tentatively begun the process of speaking with the private sector to figure out if we might be able to tap into some of these dollars, especially some of these. We know that housing is an issue for employers. It's an issue with being able to attract and retain talented employees. They have a vested interest in expanding housing in the county. So we would be pursuing matching funds from other sources as well.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Mary.
I'm concerned about the size of the homes.
Yes.
I'm just going to put this out there. No 15-minute cities.
Okay.
Markets.
So, yeah, definitely understand. So the intention of this report would not be to like design anything necessarily like that. What it is looking at what residents currently want and what prospective residents would want.
Okay, so they're not going to be restricted to, you only
Correct.
get.
No, this would be, right, yeah. If the data comes back and we find out that, and the report would break things down by different population groups, right? So the needs of young people are going to be different than older people. And so the study actually breaks it down by, they call them lifestyle clusters. So we have like retired folks, younger folks, and we'd look at the individual needs and wants of those communities. And then it would not put any restrictions in place. This would just be generating data so that, one, we can pursue grants on the state level, because it's really hard to pursue housing grants without data to back up that we have a housing gap, even though we all know there's a lack of housing. And then that data can be leveraged by local communities. There would not be any requirement that we put in tiny homes, but if we find that for whatever reason we have folks who only want 1,000 square foot homes, at least our municipalities can know that and make informed decisions. It may not be likely, but this will give us the data for that. The other thing it does is it serves as a soft incentive for developers. So we know that the county can't build housing, Market Van Buren can't build housing. We need builders to come in and do that. And this data gives builders a basis to figure out what size housing they should build so that it's attainable for our residents, but there's still a return on investment for them.
Yeah, the tiny homes are a problem. Oh, because you're next.
Go ahead.
The tiny homes are a problem because I had a case at my other job today that they're licensed as a RV, and almost all townships have an ordinance against temporary dwelling is what an RV is classified as, unless you're building a house, then you only get so much time. Then the zoning part of that with setbacks, road frontage, the 200 feet from an existing property, plus you can't have two primary dwellings on one. So that would be, oh my God, for tiny homes. Me personally, not this board, thinks that tiny home stuff is a good idea, but it's a passing fad. You know, it's cool, but you know, tree houses. How many of us? How many
I
of
would
us
love to
still
live in a
go
tree
in our
house,
tree
but-
house? You know.
Yep.
I went to build one. My grandchildren were like, "No, Dad, Grandpa,
Not big enough and no running water up there.
no."
Tiny homes is a bad example. Well, it is an example that probably won't resonate here, but it's a common example when people talk about impediments and understanding what the community
Good
wants.
for California and New York and stuff,
Yeah.
but not Cass County.
No, not most counties in this area, maybe Kalamazoo. Any other questions
Just
or
very
concerns?
quickly,
Yes.
Two communities have expressed interest when we were at the county leaders meeting a few weeks, and you know who those are, correct?
I'm aware of Marcellus because I've had a couple
Howard.
conversations with Jacqueline and Howard Township as well.
They
Okay.
both did. And then the second thing is it Market Van Buren's intention to contact some of our newer businesses and discuss having a match with them matching this? Because
Yes.
if one of those businesses grows like it looks like it's going to, they're gonna be bringing in a lot of people, and we want them to live here.
Yes, I agree. And the other thing, so yes, absolutely, that's our intention, especially given the conversations that are going around the county budget. Because the other thing that this study potentially allows us to do is look at talent attraction and bringing folks to be employed in those areas as well. Yep. Because people can't move here to work here if there aren't homes.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, I mean, I think we got a little sidetracked there with the tiny homes thing. I think we've been talking.
I shouldn't have brought that up, but.
We've been talking about the need for looking at a housing study for, you know, probably a little over a year now. And we've been active in the regional housing partnership. I think as a state, we've recognized that housing is a major concern. And having this as a backup to be able to look as we plan to the future, how do we approach this? And where do we know where those opportunities are? How do we pursue those would be a big one. And as Commissioner Marchetti alluded to, you know, this actually came up as a topic at our last county leaders meeting, and not from us.
No.
It was from the local units. So we know that there's a lot of appetite out here for something like this. And I think from my perspective at least, the letter of intent is great in that, you know, we're not committing to anything.
Not yet.
We're basically getting permission to apply.
Yep.
And so I think that's a great opportunity for us to be able to see, is this something that's even feasible?
Mhm.
And if they give us that permission, then at that point, we can start to have more detailed discussions about, you know, where the matching dollars are gonna come from. I mean, certainly we could do some background work now, I mean, maybe preliminarily, but those will get more focused as we start to realize, can we actually apply and what does that path forward look like?
Yep, absolutely. And again, for the money in that letter of intent, it asks about potential sources, and our intention is to go out and fundraise. County is not committed to anything other than, if you're willing, granting us your name to put on the application as a co-applicant.
Any other questions? We're gonna keep it just the board for now, sorry. No other questions? Everybody okay with the question from the audience?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, you said that round one, Cass County did not qualify. But
Correct.
round two, we did. Could you
Yes.
tell me how we qualified then?
Yes, so originally the parameters that the Office of Rural Development put out was based on census tracts. And originally, because 80% of the Cass County workforce leaves the county to work and 40% of those folks are going to Indiana, the southern and central census tracts in the county don't technically qualify as rural, which is mind-boggling for all of us when we drive around the county. Round two, there were enough folks that had complained about those parameters that they changed it so that, one, you can qualify based on census tracts, or two, if you can point to another state or federal program where the county was considered rural, you were eligible. And the grant that the county received to do the broadband internet mapping from this very office defined the county as rural because there's a population of less than 70,000. So that's how the whole county became eligible.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Hope.
My question has to do with the senior housing study that we've already done. It kind of looks like it's been collecting dust for a couple of years. So is there a way to tie that in with this? Because I'm completely for a housing study for the county. but that housing study we did for the senior housing at the medical care facility did define that if we were able to get we have a higher than average amount of seniors in our county. And if they had housing, this development would free up some of that housing for some of this workforce housing. That was one of the things, many things that was defined in that work study, or housing study. But does it tie in at all with this, or can it be used? It seems as if we get a study done and we're not tying the results of the study and connecting with the developers that are need to actually get that work done. How do we make sure that doesn't happen again?
Yeah, because a study doesn't do us any good if it sits on a shelf. So to that point, Hope, I guess 2 or 3 points. One, yes, that information can definitely be folded in. Whoever would be brought in to do this study would want to see all of that information that was previously collected. 2, the question is then, how do we actually connect this information to developers so that they can leverage that? And so that comes, I think, in 2 forms. One is intentionally cultivating that relationship. So that's something our office had been doing. This is really would be part 1 of 2 steps. The next step in attracting developers is creating an inventory of available spaces for development. But that's a whole other can of worms we can open. First, we're looking at actually proving to developers that there's a return on investment for being in Cass County, because sometimes rural communities get written off compared to urban communities because the thought is there's just not return on investment. This study will help build the case that there actually is. The other thing that, and this is getting a little bit nitty gritty, and to Matt's point would come if we were actually invited to proceed with the application. But one of the things that will score well in this application, and I think would set the county up for success, is looking at developing something countywide that is like a dedicated task force or commission, not something that just meets every other month because they're supposed to, but something that's comprised of people across the public and private sectors looking at how to disseminate and leverage this information. Because the reality is, even with Market Van Buren working on this, even with some of our local communities and townships starting to work on this, we're just inherently capacity restricted. And so part of the intention with this grant would be that it would start the process of looking at what kind of a structure, whether it's a task force, maybe someone starts up a nonprofit, but who can we bring in to be the community champions to actually use this data on a local level? Because again, a lot of our townships, they're not open even 5 days a week. The staff doesn't have the capacity to use this data. And Market Van Buren is certainly dedicated to that, but we need to look at other ways to build that rural capacity so this data can be beneficial. Most of these studies have a runway of 5 to 8 years of true, this data holds absolutely solid. And then you usually get another 5 years on the back end of that where the dollar amounts associated with rents of what people are willing and able to pay change, but the total number of units that are in demand remain the same. So even if it takes a little bit of time, a little bit of runway for us to get whatever infrastructure is needed on the county level up to leverage this data, we need the data first to be able to do that. And so that's one of the other benefits of it too, is it looks at the whole county and all municipalities. So everybody is starting from a level playing field, at least in terms of access to information. Any other questions, thoughts?
So if we move this forward to hold a special meeting in order to get it passed for the deadline, make sure everybody's aware of that. Everybody's good with that, then
Yes.
the chair and the administrator get together and schedule the meeting?
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you all. We'll see you shortly.
My only thing is, when I look at this and heard what the elected had said, if we can come up with $50,000 match on this,
We don't have to.
we don't have to?
No.
Okay, because I'm thinking maybe we could save somebody out there.
No, we don't have to.
No, we don't have to.
All right.
We're gonna take a 5-minute recess.
Oh, wait, one second. Oh, do we want to move the MDARD rural readiness grant to the regular meeting?
We can't, we gotta have.
Oh, you're
I said we
right.
have to have a special meeting for that.
I'm sorry.
So the chair and the administrator will let us know when that's gonna be scheduled.
Okay.
We'll get it worked out.
So moving to item C, audit services RFP.
Yeah, so I can give a little bit of a brief summary of this. So we had 3 proposals to put out an RFP for audit services. We had 3 proposals that we got back, Yo and Yo, Raymond, and AHP. Yo and Yo is our current provider. They actually offered the lowest cost bid overall, so that kind of helped make it a little bit more straightforward for what we would recommend. And then we, as noted, actually have the same provider for medical care and road commission, so we have some synergy there. I know both of them called when they saw we had our RFP out and said, are you guys going to keep your current provider? Because it's nice having that. And we said, well, we don't know. We'll see what happens. But I think the way it shook out, being the low-cost provider as well as having previous history with them and that synergy with our partners, pretty much a slam dunk in terms of what we would recommend to do.
So you're recommending going with Yo and Yo again?
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns, discussion?
I'd like to recommend we move that forward.
We'll move to the next agenda. All right, item D is National Preparedness Month.
Yeah, so September is always National Preparedness Month through FEMA. So I don't know if we've actually looked at having a resolution like this in the past. I didn't see that we have had one recently. But it seemed like a good idea to be able to kind of, especially in the landscape we're in, promote people preparing for emergencies and taking steps to make sure they're ready. This year's topic or theme is actually preparing older adults for disasters. But overall, I think the ready.gov website gives a lot of information to all of our homeowners, neighborhoods in general, businesses, schools, and the community at large to be able to kind of plan for various different types of emergencies and come up with how they would deal with those challenges if they would arise. So I think it's a good idea to be able to spotlight those things and encourage folks to look at their resources and plan ahead.
So it's a resolution for naming next month.
Yes, so the resolution.
Anybody have any
named
questions?
September is
Too easy.
National Preparedness Month.
Everybody go with passing the resolution for the next?
Yes.
Yes.
I am.
Yes.
National Bug Out Bag Day.
All right, item E is Market Van Buren Economic Development Agreement.
Yeah, so I'll talk about this one a little bit too. So I think it goes back to 2020. The county embarked upon a pilot program with Market Van Buren for economic development services. Following that initial pilot, we had a formal agreement from 2021 through this year. That agreement expires on September 30th. The new agreement would be for a 3-year term beginning October 1st, 2023, and would extend through September 30th of 26. Annual cost would be $115,000 for the first year and would increase 2% each October to adjust for inflation. A couple changes that are coming as part of this, and I think we've built a good relationship with Market Van Buren, but obviously when we talk about it, it doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well. So, especially when we're talking about a multi-county partnership. So, with this, it would include within 12 months the execution, or within 12 months of the execution of the agreement, a rebranding of Market Van Buren to be more inclusive. So, I guess I'm probably not privy to be able to announce what it might be, but.
Well, we don't know officially yet. The direction from the board was to make sure we ran it through official marketing channels to make sure we weren't stepping on anybody's toes. But it would not be Market Van Buren Cass, it'll be something else different that.
Something exciting.
Yes, the Economic Development Corporation got a preview of kind of what we're thinking.
Yeah, so I think if that goes through, I think everybody would be very happy with that. It plays well, markets well, so I think it's good.
Yep.
And then the addition, it would also have, carry with it a minimum of 5 board seats on the Market Van Buren board. 2 of those seats would be reserved for commissioners as well.
Are those positions chair appointed, or are they just voluntary like we do the other ones?
We have an application process and then a subcommittee. So from the Market Van Buren side, it would be whoever expressed interest and wanted to serve. If the entirety of the Board of Commissioners wanted to join the Market Van Buren board, certainly we could select applications, but I would recommend that the two would be selected by the board itself.
By us as application,
So,
yeah.
getting to that number, throughout the discussions we've had over the last month or so pertaining to this document, with us potentially increasing our share to over $100,000, I fought for an extra board seat for a commissioner from our county, because I currently sit on that board, and I think there's 19 members.
Yep, yeah, it's still Van Buren heavy from
Of the 19,
history.
3 are representing Cass County currently. Myself, a representative from Midwest Energy, and a representative from CHT. That's why we put the language in the contract to get us another board member from our current board.
So 2 commissioners plus
The 3
Others is fine.
others is 5.
Yes.
Minimum,
With-
and then
yes, with
the other.
parameters of other government, public, or
Yep.
private sector.
Midwest Energy, wait, CHT, Midwest Energy, you,
Mhm.
and then we need one.
That's all we have so far.
And, okay, so then we need one other commissioner,
Yep.
and then someone else from, that would be 5. You, CHT.
Midwest.
Oh,
That's 3.
I missed Midwest,
Yep.
okay, I missed Midwest, okay, thank you.
One thing I guess, I wanted to touch on too, I think from an economic development standpoint, I think it's one of those things where, and we've seen this play out, that it's not something where you see things bear fruit, in a month. I mean, it takes time, and I think.
It's a long range.
Over that 3-year period we worked together, I think we've seen a lot of great progress being made. And one thing, to your credit specifically, and something I've seen is really the growth of that grant component from Market Center or whatever the new entity's name will be, is that I think, maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think developing that ability to pursue grants and assist local communities with grants has been a big driver and something I think you guys are planning to grow.
Yes.
Over the next few years as well too.
Yep. It was the investment from Cass County that allowed us to transition my role into that phase, and it'll continue.
Are we still in discussion?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm okay with the year contract, but I'm not okay with the 3-year. I'm not.
Well, that will come at our discussion. If we move it forward, that discussion will come at the business
Okay, so
meeting.
we can negotiate it?
Or,
I would say probably not.
no, right now, maybe.
I think they're very interested in a 3-year contract.
So I haven't been a part of the conversations between the commissioners and administration, but I can speak for our office that as much as possible, our priorities are multi-year agreements. There is a mechanism in here by which either party can terminate the contract. The rationale between a multi-year contract is it gives us some leeway in terms of planning activities, especially when it comes for our staff. The reality is that the Cass County contract is funding about 1 1/4 staff positions. And so that gives our staff a sense of security in terms of, although certainly a contract can be canceled at any point, some runway and ability to retain staff and budget effectively.
Okay, and you would provide monthly reports to us?
We can certainly provide updates. Part of the way we do that is through the Economic Development Corporation. And there would be certainly, we would want to define what kind of reports you want. We don't want to inundate you guys with information that isn't helpful. There are some communities in other parts of the state that ask for things like how many companies did you visit, what did you talk about, all of these things. But
Just projects?
Yes. Just pardon?
Projects?
Yeah, yep, that's certainly something that we could provide to the Board of Commissioners and would provide now upon request whenever was desired. Yep.
And get ready for the following meeting where we'll actually vote on this. Is there gonna be some sort of a business plan put forth on how those 3 years are gonna shape out for our county? What kind of involvement are we looking at versus what we're getting now?
Are you thinking specific projects or in terms of services that are illustrated?
But my understanding is that we would like to see more of a presence throughout the entire county versus just some of these concentrated areas.
Yeah, yep, I understand what you're saying. Outside of Cassopolis and Dowagiac, the Edwardsburgs, the Vandalias, the Marcelluses. Yeah, that's certainly something we can speak to. again, I'm going to do my best not to speak on behalf of the board and Zach, who actually is the executive director and runs the show. But yeah, the desire is to make sure we have a robust presence throughout Cass County. The challenge that is before us is making sure we're supporting the communities and supporting economic development in those areas that aren't those centers of development, right? And so that is, again, something that I think takes time. It doesn't happen over just a month. But now that we're integrated into Cass County and we're building these standing relationships with municipal leaders, it becomes a lot easier. So, yes.
If I could say, a few weeks ago, that they have a new person, and Katie Mohop, and she has been to the county leader meeting twice, as far as I know. And several weeks ago, I met her in Edwardsburg and took her all around and showed her just what the southern part of our community looks like. And she will be spending more time in Cass County.
Yep. Part of the challenge was we did have a vacant position for a while. We think Katie is a good fit. We're hoping she won't go anywhere. And if there's anything ever in particular that you'd like our staff to see, a particular site or something else is going on, we would be happy to come down and do tours and see what you're seeing in your communities from your perspective. We know what we know from our offices and from driving around and from interacting with local leaders, but certainly you would all have unique perspectives.
I have a suggestion that you do, just in case there's any opposition to Margaret Van Buren, show what this county would look like without you all. That would be something good to contrast, you know, that maybe quell some of the naysayers, I guess, for lack of a better term.
I'm sure Zach would be happy to speak to that. Yep.
A couple of things. I mean, just with the term.
You said one thing.
With the term, you touched on this, but there is a termination clause in there, so the contract could be terminated in I think, with a 120-day notice if necessary. And part of the term, I think, the rationale for the longer term is that going through the rebranding process and all of that is not, you know, something that's simple. It takes a lot of time and effort, and in some cases, I mean, money to actually be able to facilitate that. So I think that's part of it too, is that before embarking on that, you know, they wanted to see a longer commitment from the county before heading in that direction. So I think that's part of what plays into that also.
That's fair to say. The analogy we were using in our own offices is we wanted to make sure we had dated sufficiently long enough before we got married and changed our name. We're ready to make that commitment to you guys.
Any questions or discussion?
I have made a comment to Zach about the upcoming meeting and how we would, to help us solidify our decision, and maybe just reiterate on some of the points that the involvement that you guys have had in help grow our county, and just maybe just touch on some of those again. And
certainly.
What kind of value you guys bring to the county.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Just, I don't know if I've said anything about this or not, but I have been actively involved with Zach around into the Dowagiac area. So we've been to a couple businesses. We discussed skilled trades that we need. And when he gets back off vacation, we'll be working on instituting, hopefully, some sort of skilled trades apprenticeships or whatever the case may be. I don't know what he has on his mind, but education for adults as well as teenagers is very important. So he knows that. Margaret Van Buren knows that.
Yes.
In the meetings that I was in with them, I stressed that heavily, and I appreciate him and her, along with housing here. Those are two crucial points that we need for business.
Exactly.
And we need business for revenue.
That's right. You're right, Jim.
Anybody else? Everybody's good with moving it on to the next meeting?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you all. We'll see you then, and if anything else comes up between now and then that you'd like to hear about, please let us know.
And don't feel bad if you need to run.
Thank you.
All right, F is rescission of R 229-22.
I'm going to talk about it for a second?
I don't think you need to talk about it unless somebody wants to discuss it.
Okay.
Anybody want to dive into the discussion, or are we good to move it forward?
Okay, what is it? What
It's a resolution to reauthorize step-level hiring across full pay scale.
Okay. So we're authorizing that.
So Matt right now has the ability to go
Right.
from 1 to 9. If we remove this, it goes back to a 1 through 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just put this in place a couple months ago, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
you got put it in December.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is, December's correct. There's a couple resolutions I think that have been confused, so I guess I wanted to touch on that. There was a previous resolution from a couple months ago that was about step level retention increases. So it's about
Yeah.
existing employees and being able to potentially propose an increase for someone while they're currently employed, for whether it was positive performance, things like that. This is more about the new hire side, so it's
Okay.
about bringing people in at what rate they would be hired in at.
Okay.
And this started, I think, just following COVID, and then it's been renewed the last couple of years, but in consideration with where we're at with the budget, we thought it might make more sense to look at capping that at that midpoint again.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Everybody's good with moving it forward?
Yep.
Item G, fiscal year 24 budget and general appropriations act resolution.
I'll note one thing. In the be it further resolved section there at the bottom, those numbers are from the administrator's recommended budget. I was not being presumptuous, I just wanted to make sure we had something in there as an example. That can be changed depending on the will of the board, obviously. But, we will obviously craft this resolution and move forward with that based on whatever direction the board decides to go.
I think we should have a quick special meeting or workshop one night next week to dive into this a little further and actually talk about it.
And do that other at the same time.
Yeah, then we could have the special meeting or just add it
Have
up,
a
or
special
have a special
meeting.
meeting before or after that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
knock it all out.
Do we want to find out people's availability or just have the chairman get with the administrator and schedule something for Thursday night or something?
He usually sends out that email
Let's figure it out now, because we don't have to have an email exchange. for
Thursday.
everybody.
Really simple.
Thursday at
We
1700.
have 2
Thursday
weeks,
is
I
the
guess,
best-
between the next meeting, so.
Thursday at 1700, just like our normal commissioner meeting would be great.
Bump it back like 5:15, so it's a little easier for,
wait.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Thursday is the 24th,
Yeah.
sure.
okay? I'm good.
Let's bump start time to 5:15, that way if anybody else, public, other buildings want to show up, they have a little bit of time to get here.
Okay.
Matt will send out an agenda with
Yeah.
both of those and all that.
It'll be,
Well, it won't be the same agenda, we'll do,
it'll have to be.
we do the special meeting at 5 and then start this one at 5:15.
Special meeting.
Mhm.
You probably could combine them.
Yeah.
I don't see why, I mean, it's gonna be publicized and plenty of notice, there's no reason why we couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, you could have just be, that could be the order.
Just do
You know,
one
do
agenda.
Yeah.
the grant LOI first, and then move into the budget right after that. I mean,
Sure.
that'll give us a
Yeah.
little bit of time there.
Is everybody okay with that?
I'm okay.
Yep.
We'll move on to H, Southwest Michigan Behavioral Health Intergovernmental Contract. Pretty self-explanatory,
Yes.
does anybody have any discussion points
No,
they'd like to make?
I think we should move it on to the next regular meeting.
Everybody else in agreement with that?
Yep.
Okay. And then item I is the fiscal year 23 budget amendments. They're one of the last pages in the packet.
I got some questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the expenditures for money received from different lake associations, is that a pass-through or why is it expense if it's money received from the, why wouldn't it be revenue?
Those are the contract hours, right? Sheriff?
Part-time wages, FICA, workers'
I have
comp?
to look at the budget adjustments.
So on the amendment, it's got like your, here, I'll read one off to you.
Oh,
Marine law enforcement expenditures for money received from different lake associations.
yeah, so I can speak to that. So when we entered the budget last year, Rick is always, I shouldn't say always, but Rick gets some money from different lake associations that they donate. A budget was not entered for those lake association monies that we have here, and it's restricted for that purpose only. So we went and we looked at the balance that we have with the cash that we have, and that was to, that's how we were gonna enter those expenditures based on that extra money that we do have.
Correct.
Okay. And we made sure it's in there, that's true.
Is that your only question? Does anybody else have any questions?
I have another question. The road commission, okay, so one is revenue, one is interest income, and then,
So there is activity in the general ledger under that fund number, and there's not a budget set.
Okay.
And basically, interest is coming
Okay.
in, and I wanted to make sure that there was an
Okay.
expense in case we needed to pay out that money. It's completely their money. It's just in setting a budget, that way we don't get in trouble for not having a budget set for those. Those were a new
yeah,
funds and accounts as we did those chart of account changes, so they kind of got missed during budget time.
thank you.
You're welcome.
If nobody has anything further, we will move it forward. Okay, so next item is the board member comments, I believe?
I have none.
I don't know, I lost my front page.
I have none.
You are correct.
Yeah, number 19, board member comments, announcements. Go ahead.
Just got some good news from Wayne Township Fire Department. They received a $100,000 grant for new packs and air bottles. So
Oh, wow. Was that the one that came through the one that, I can't think of what it was
For
called.
the volunteers.
Yes.
That grant.
Oh, wow. That is super.
And thanks to Indian Lake Chief that he's the one that started the grant, and there was like 3 departments, I guess, that applied for this grant.
And those air packs are
He's a go-getter.
expensive.
They are very expensive. That will probably, and they were in the process of replacing all of them
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they
yeah.
were old.
Yeah.
So they were outdated, and they would probably, if they were tested again, they'd probably fail to test.
Well, that is good news.
Yes, that's very good news.
Is that 100% reimbursement, or was there a matching component
I
to
think
that?
there was a matching component, and I have to look at that again, but it was very small.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I was
Very
just
small.
curious, I passed the information along to another fire department too, and I didn't have that information, so I was just curious.
I would too. They didn't get it. So,
Commissioner Burr, do you have something?
Yeah, I think I've said this before, but if anybody wants to meet, I can utilize Microsoft Teams, particularly in the afternoons. It works well for me, but it's hard for me to get down here in person sometimes, so anybody who would like to speak about the budget or anything, just reach me on Outlook and we'll set some time up.
oh, okay, thank you.
I have one quick thing. If it ends up going in fruition, then we move forward with the Market Van Buren agreement. I'd like to see Sam put on that board if he has the time and the availability for it.
I would agree with that as well.
Can I say one thing?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Last meeting, Jeff Van Bell had found this in a drain pipe.
Drain file.
Drain
Drain
pipe.
file.
And what was it?
It was probably the oldest drain in the county.
Oh.
It dated back to 1870, and that's a note the drain commissioner made in 1906 on a piece of letterhead for a hotel that I believe you told me Ryan was right across.
Right across the street?
Yeah.
Oh,
So I just brought it. I know Mary likes that.
That's neat.
Too bad it's not still there.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Meeting adjourned.